it's so great that you have taken time to be with us today. We really appreciate that. So as we all know, the LA 2028 Olympics and Paralympic Games will be here in 6 years. And there's so much more that goes into it than just the games, as I'm sure you'll tell us. What's the vision for the organizing committee for the games?
Well, Dean Bernardo and UCLA Anderson, thank you very much for having me, first of all, for this amazing inaugural event. UCLA is an amazing partner of the games and will be a partner on our journey to 2028. So it is fantastic to be here. Our last conversation we had with the Anderson School was up at, I think, a newly built building 6 or 8 months ago, which was a fantastic place. But you're right, there's nothing better to be here at Pauley. And I understand there was a Anderson Halloween party last night, so I thank all of you that answered the bell and are here for this morning session. So we'll try and get the energy up. And I'd also like to acknowledge and thank some of my colleagues that are here, our Olympians and Paralympians as part of our fellowship program, and some of my other colleagues certainly are trying to make that connection with the university and your school as we go down our journey. So, so to your question, as we think about what it is we're trying to do, we set out our mission, first of all, is really to deliver the most innovative, amazing experience, games experience for all of our stakeholders, whether that's the athletes, the spectators in the community, the IOC family, the IPC family, the media, the broadcasters, and our partners. But we say very often that if we just deliver a great games, which is obviously very complex, but if we just deliver a great games, we'll fall short of the opportunity that we really think we have and have a responsibility to do. We have you mentioned 1984, and the success of '84 is a high bar for us. And so we developed a vision as we talk about it internally around collectively creating what's next by harnessing the power of sport and the power of our differences is our vision statement. And what we mean by that is that we really want to think differently about how games can be planned, how games can be delivered, and the experience that we want to bring to the community. And that's really where that vision and our values got rooted in. Was we started with the city of LA. And as we look at the city of LA, and I know all of you are a part of it here, there really is no one LA. We start there. It's a collection of people from all over the world. It's one of the most diverse cities in the world, of the cultures, of the backgrounds, of the entertainment that's brought here, the food that's brought here, and it just, you can't pinpoint it to one thing. It's a city of dreamers that can really think about, really what's next, what's in the future. So that drives us, even down to how we thought about our emblem. Our logo is not a static logo. We developed a emblem with the help of athletes, with the help of community leaders, with the help of celebrities in Hollywood, to create 28 different versions of our logo to launch that has a dynamic A in the term LA 28 that brings the creativity and the innovation to what it is we're trying to do. So it gives you a little bit of a sense on how we think beyond just delivering the games, which I know we'll talk probably most about here, but as we think about reimagining the games, we're not trying to change everything, but I think we are trying to, again, with our business school hats on, trying to ask a lot of questions and think differently about what the possibilities might be, not just for LA, but for the future of the movement.
Thanks. Tell us a little bit about the concept of a no-build games, which is somewhat unique, certainly in recent experience. Tell us why that's an important part of the vision.
Yeah, no, very much. And I'd say, one, as we started out through this bid process, we were extremely fortunate to be in Los Angeles because of how unique the city is. Not only the storied history within the games, but to your point, we're fortunate that we don't have to build anything permanent for the games. We have a mantra of we want to fit the games to the city, not the other way around. And that fortunate part comes with the premier facilities that we have that are operated by world-class operators 365 days of the year. So why that's important for us is, and we can talk a little bit about our journey as well, but we had an extra 4 years to plan the games, and typically an organizing committee, to the Dean's question, is spending the early part trying to figure out how they're going to build what they need to do to deliver the games, and hopefully think about what the legacy business plan is. But typically, an organizing committee is operating those facilities themselves for the very first time during the games. And we've got the benefit, if we use UCLA as an amazing example, this will be the home of the athletes. This will be our Olympic and Paralympic village. And what the campus has done in operating like an international village, housing and feeding more people 365 days than we'll have athletes here. It just allows us to really think about the experience that we want to create and not have to worry as much about building and operating. Although we will have to figure out how it all comes together in the games context, but the starting point we have is really unique, and hopefully it'll be a model, even though there's not too many cities exactly like LA, it can be a model where other host committees in the future can start to think differently about how they use what they have.
Okay, great. Tell us a little bit about how LA came to be the host city of 2028, and tell us a little bit about how you became involved with LA 2028.
So this journey for our organization and for myself and my colleague Danny Coblin, who you'll meet later, started back in June of 2014. And I'd say the city itself has had a history of wanting to connect and bid for games. And my history, dates back a little bit further, but specifically for our organization, Casey Wasserman, who's obviously an alum here and was asked by the mayor in 2014 to help him with his vision of bringing the games back to LA. And so I myself and Danny have been working with Casey for the better part of 6 or 7 years. And so it was a internal process with the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee at the time, where they had committed on behalf of the U.S. to put a bid in for the games, but the U.S. has so many great cities that they went through a bidding process amongst other cities. So we started with an internal process there. After we got through that, they chose Boston, which was kind of a challenging blip for us. We call it our Boston vacation. But as they were going through the lead up to the international phase that was starting in the fall of 2015, for a number of reasons, they decided to withdraw, and we got back to the table and then really started the bid company, which was about a 50-person organization that was put together for about 2 years to go through a process that doesn't really exist anymore, but it was a structured process amongst 5 different cities to bid for the games. The twists and turns we had in there ultimately had us down to us in Paris. And we ended up, negotiating together with them and the IOC the ability to award 2 games at the same time, 2024 and 2028. And we negotiated, we raised our hand and negotiated for 2028. And even, take away the last couple years, even then we were thankful of having 2028 because it really gave us an unprecedented runway to go back to our vision statement and really think through what we can do to improve the experience. And so now we're a full-fledged organizing committee. We kind of went through a little bit of a startup phase. We've gone through the first 4 years that were kind of our extra 4 years of building foundation, and we're on deck. We're up after Paris. We're about an organization, about 130 people today, and continuing to grow.
Great. And how did you get involved in LA 2028 and really perhaps the most important role?
Yeah. Well, thank you. I think it certainly takes a village, but the short answer is, I started through that bid process. Myself and Danny really kind of split up the duties of how do we think about starting up from an operational perspective. And so I started focusing on the operations of the bid company at the time, now the organizing committee, to set up the operations of the organization, but also think about the games plan work. And Danny, who you'll hear from later, is really focused more around the commercial side and the revenue side. So that's the short answer. The more reflective answer, I kind of go back to the journey that provided me, I think the opportunities to have been able to be in this role. And I think I told you the story last time we talked, but everybody has a place where they remember where they first engaged with the games, and mine was like the Dean. I'm Canadian, and I didn't grow up in LA like Danny did, and he'll tell you his story later. I remember '84 as the first time that I engaged with the games. I was 11 years old. I was at a party where my parents had taken me to their friend's house, not my friend's house. So we were kind of down in the basement just hanging out against this backdrop of this 300-pound, 32-inch TV at the time, to date myself. But as we were going through the evening, the parents came down and turned on the television, and they put on what at the time was the Olympics. It was the swimming competition, and we didn't know what we were watching. But as the evening went through, there were two Canadian swimmers in particular, Victor Davis and Alex Baumann, that had unbelievable, unexpected victory gold medal races. And I don't remember the races as much as I remember my parents and their friends on how emotional they were of these victories. And that's the first time I realized what it meant to be patriotic for a country. And then through those games, really engaging with the athletics competition, and what Carl Lewis in particular did was somebody that I followed as a track athlete myself, and I still have my book report that I did in 6th grade around his story. And so I tell you that because that's kind of where the passion lied for the games, but it wasn't as much for the athletics as I evolved my career, where I thought I wanted to take my career. It was the business of sports that intrigued me, and so I had an opportunity to start my career at Nike in '96, which was the last Summer Games in LA and Atlanta, and I wasn't there, but it was a pretty irreverent games for Nike as a brand, and the athletes that won there, and it created a lot of different commercial rules because of what a brand was able to do. But that had me on a path to being able to go to Sydney in 2000, which was my first games there when I was working with Canada Basketball. And then when I joined the Boston Consulting Group out of business school, was kind of another turning point, because my first project that I worked at BCG was on the bid for LA. This is before Casey got involved, the bid for LA as they were competing against Chicago for the 2016 bid that ultimately went to Rio. So a little bit rambling story, but I wanted to just share that as, there were points in time where I started to realize that the business of sports is super interesting, but the mission and the opportunity that something like the Olympic and Paralympic Games has is something that I didn't realize that I had such a passion for, and ultimately the civic opportunity that we have is something that's led me to where I'm today.
Great. Well, I don't want to date myself, but my first Olympic moment was Olga Korbut, 1972. I don't know if any of you remember that, but that was, I remember, one of those remarkable Olympic moments. Okay, so I feel like I have a difficult job. There's lots of things going on at the Anderson School at any time, and coordinating all that activity makes it hard for me to sleep. And then I think 2028 Olympics. I mean, the enterprise is massive. The amount of coordination, the number of decisions are extraordinary. I want to ask, how do you sleep at night? But tell us, what's a day in the life like for you? Sure. With trying to make progress on these extraordinary set of challenges?
Yeah, well, I don't know if I've slept much since 2014, but and won't probably get much sleep before 2028, as will our team. It's extremely complex for sure. And it's funny because in the movement, the main rookies in the movement are the new organizing committees, because they're typically always a new group that's doing it for the first time. I think as we look, first of all, at the journey that we have, it's such a unique concept, because we went from political campaign that was the bid to what we call a true startup, building from the ground up, the organizing committee foundation, and how we're going to attack this. We're kind of now in what I describe as our awkward teenage years. We're starting to grow. We're not insignificant, but we're not where we're going to be, and then we will continue to grow and hyper growth. That J curve really hits in 26 or 27, where we get to 6,000 potential employees and 100,000 plus volunteers and contractors, and then we fall off a cliff, and we all lose our jobs on the same day, and we'll be coming back to Anderson's career center to look for jobs. But that's the unique part, and doing all that in 10-year span is super unique. But we really attacked it, one, as we really looked at building our leadership team. We didn't, not that other organizing committees have done it incorrectly, but we didn't want to build a typical organizing committee from people within the movement. We actually valued a lot of different perspectives and different backgrounds. So we build, I think I'm so fortunate to be working with such an all-star crew of leaders that really can bring different perspectives to how to think about this, this journey. And then, thinking about the things that you all do at school every day, it's actually not too dissimilar to that, is that we really looked at how do we, for lack of a better term, chunk up the problem? How do we think about the phases that we really need to do and really prioritize the organization? Because I think the biggest challenge of organizing committees that we had heard and learned from is that there's a tendency, even in a 7-year horizon, to build really quickly. And when you do that, you end up either hiring too fast and doing work too early that your economic model then gets challenged, and 2, you end up having to redo work closer to the games. So we really looked at the first 4 years as the first phase of how do we set up the foundation of our organizing committee, just the nuts and bolts of what it takes to run a business, number 1. And number 2, what was really important for us is our commercial side. So Danny will talk more about that this afternoon, but the revenue model and the revenue that we get is typically in the last 4 years, but the sponsorship and license and consumer products is an area where that brings revenue into our organization. As a private nonprofit, that's a key of importance to us. And then the third was your first question, our vision, our values. How do we want to talk internally? How do we talk externally? We're now in a new phase that is kind of the tail end of our strategic phase between now and Paris 2024. And that's really where we've got the opportunity to solidify our games plan, which we can talk a little bit more about, and solidify our partnerships, but really strategically, going back to our vision, what are those things that we want to reimagine? What are those moonshot opportunities that we want to bring to life? Because after 24, we're no longer on deck, we're up, and we need to then pivot the organization and be in a place where we can be running really hard to operate for the games. And that will be a whole nother phase that will be the real complexity, but if we're putting the foundations for the various functional areas that we need to have, then we can, and get our operating model right, then being able to sprint is the goal.
Yeah. Just a couple of things to follow up. To what extent do you monitor what's happening or going to happen in Paris 2024? As you think about, there's a lot of learning that goes on here. I imagine you learned from previous Olympics, the '84 Olympics here. Is there any sort of coordination or thinking about how you can build on what might be happening in 2024?
Yeah, 100%. The unique part about our award and being awarded at the same time as Paris was that there was this unique opportunity going from friendly competitors to collaborators. Now, they are in a much different situation, especially given the pandemic and the shorter window that they have. But that in itself is allowing us to learn certain things around what they're doing with their Athletes Village can help us think differently about how we want to connect here, how they are setting up the organization, and the learnings that they have are going to be immensely helpful for us. We've partnered with them on one of those moonshot opportunities was a new way to think about hospitality and ticketing, and primarily hospitality, and global hospitality, as opposed to thinking about it on a games-by-games basis. How do we think about hospitality in a global basis and not having it be sold country by country? And so we partnered with them and the IOC on how to change that model. And it's not only going to be a much more efficient model, but it's a much more successful commercial model. Yeah. And then we will be in Paris for the 2024 games, with a big chunk of our team to really observe on the ground. We had a small team in Tokyo. We were in Rio during our bid, and that's really where you get the most learning, for sure.
Great. You alluded to this a little bit earlier, but LA, it's always hosting large sports events. We hosted the Super Bowl this year, the Major League Baseball All-Star Game. We're going to be hosting the World Cup in 2026. You also alluded to the fact that UCLA, is a place that already houses and feeds large number of people. How much does the experience and kind of the breadth of local businesses and other partners help you in this process? I can imagine in LA it would be a fundamentally different planning proposition than it might be in other places that don't have that experience.
Yeah, very much, and I think that goes back to your earlier question about how fortunate we think we believe we are. not having to build, number one, but to your question, the world-class partners, the term I used before, is such a unique opportunity because of the capabilities they bring. And so there's probably a couple aspects to that. Number one, how they operate their facilities gives us a unique perspective when we're starting to partner with international sport federations on how we'll present the sports. What they're already doing is leaps and bounds about where it's come from. So that's a starting point. I think the second piece is, as we think about our operating model, and I referenced the potential for our organizing committee to be 6,000 people. That was kind of based on some historical comps, from London and others. But as we think about what UCLA does to run the campus here, an organizing committee would typically build an entire village team. We likely are not going to have to do that as we think about the partnership that we'll bring you with the likes of AEG that run LA Live and the Dignity Health Sports Center. We're not only going to be more efficient in the way that we build our team, but absolutely more effective because of the skill sets and the way that we can actually leverage the experience that they have. So I think that the challenge in all of that is that while there's immense amount of experience here, nobody has done this at the scale of the games themselves. And just to put it in perspective, just purely as we think of, you referenced Super Bowl, if we think about just purely the number of tickets that were put through Super Bowl and what it took to put on that event here, putting on the games is like the equivalent of 7 Super Bowls every single day for 16 days, and then you take a break for 10 days, and then you do it all over again for 12 days of the Paralympics, 7 Super Bowls every day. So if anything keeps me up at night, outside of just the pure scale of it, it is how do we knit all that together? And that's really where we're spending most of our time, is putting the partnerships in place that can actually connect through a consistent way to deliver the games.
Great. So tell us a little bit about the events, first of all, I'm very interested to know, I imagine many others here are interested to know what's going to be happening at UCLA, but generally, how do you go through the process of mapping events and activities to this remarkable diversity of the city? That is also a really, to me, an incredibly interesting decision-making process, because there is so much diversity across the city. How do you bring those two things together?
Yeah, it's been fascinating, I'd say, and it dates back to our bid, because one of our main deliverables for our bid was we had to develop our games plan. And so some of the most fun and fascinating conversations were how to think about that exact question. And unlike other cities, we've had the ability to think about, options A, B, and C for every single sport that's on the program, as opposed to trying to just find option A. But as we do that, it also creates this potential for a never-ending circle, because the puzzle pieces continue to shift, and you can be in these endless brainstorming sessions about what the art of the possible is. But really what we ultimately focused on as we looked at the assets that exist, what are the filters by which we'll ultimately make those types of decisions? And we always start, with our Olympians and Paralympians here, we start with the athletes. What's going to be the best experience for the athletes, and making sure that they're set up to compete at their best. What's the best use of the facilities, the way that they're set up, and the sports or the non-competition experiences that we're trying to create? What's the best and most the best net economic opportunity, both in terms of how do we utilize existing facilities so we can reduce our costs and complexity, but also how do we provide the best commercial opportunity from a revenue perspective. And then the fourth is, how do we think about legacy? And again, previous games, legacy has typically been about what are you building. For us, it potentially could be how are we improving, but it's also thinking about the human legacy. And so, as we went through all of that, we also have this unique setup in the city, to your community question, where we don't just have this collection of independent venues around the city. If any of you have been to a games or heard the stories of London or Rio or Sydney, they developed this purpose-built, they call it the Olympic or Paralympic Park, which had upwards of 70% of the event, the sports and competitions taking place there at live sites, music and entertainment, just the way to really experience the games in an amazing place. You know, for us, you know, we're not going to purpose build that, but we have these natural, what we call sports parks. You know, we think about downtown and LA Live, the convention center, crypto.com, which is continuously harder to say. You know, the Microsoft Theater, the hotels that are there, the plaza. You go down to USC. I know that's the other school. We love all of our partners the same, but I'm definitely excited to be here and wear blue.
Today you love us more.
Exactly, I wear blue. But you know, what we'll do, competition and have the media house there. What we'll do here with the athletes, Dignity Health Center, which I referenced, that's also run by AEG, is a natural sports park with 5 different venues there, and what's happening in Inglewood and things that we can do in the Valley. So we've got 4 or 5 of these sports parks that take that excitement and actually connect it around the community and really embed the games to different parts of the community. And with my geeky operational hat on, it also spreads out the operations of what we're trying to do, so we're not actually having everything go into one place.
Great. So one of the goals you mentioned earlier is to showcase LA. And let me make it a little more granular. How can we showcase UCLA, which is an important venue and site of the athletes?
Well, it definitely starts there, and I can give a little bit of history if it's not too much of a tangent. When we first started our bid in 2014, we were given some guidance that you know, utilizing dorms was not going to be, you know, something that the International Olympic Committee would be excited about, and so we thought about where we could, you know, potentially build a village. When we got into the international competition, we'd always thought about what UCLA could do from a sports perspective, but when we in earnest toured the Hill and realized that I would never use the term dorms. This is luxury apartments here. It makes us all want to go back to college when
they say we have the best
there.
food and #1 in food in the U.S. I know.
100%.
It's changed a lot since I went to college.
Well, to that point, we had a visit during the bid of President Bach, and we had just made the decision to bring the Athletes Village here, and we not only toured them through the campus, but we ate at Broomplate, and it just is unbelievable, the facilities. And you walk through here, and on any given day, we just had what's called our coordination commission. It's a group of 25 advisors from the IOC. It was the first time we've had them here in person, and we brought them here. It just so happened the timing, you know, was either unfortunate or fortunate, but it was move-in day for all of you, and it just operates like an international village day to day. One of our fun stories is as we were going through our bid process, you know, we brought some technical advisors to look at the village, and we walked them we were on our way to the Hill, and we walked through the Drake Stadium at the bottom corner there where you enter, and as we just peered in to give them a view of that, Allison Felix. It couldn't have been more better timed. Allison Felix came around the bend. She was a part of our team, but we had not planned for her to be there that day. She gave us a wave, and they kind of looked at us. We walked up the hill, and as we were walking up the hill, we looked over into the tennis center, and on the far court, Serena Williams was there training. She had just got ousted from the tournament in Indio. That was also not planned. What was planned is we took them to Jordan Weber's room, retired London 2012 gymnastics gold medalist. And so the athletes that are here in Southern California and UCLA in particular that train here every day is really core. And we actually have shifted some of our focus to say we actually want to use the best of what this campus has to offer purely for the athletes, so that not only are they going to be housed here and fed here, but they'll do the majority of their training here. And to have all of this in one place where they're typically having to be, now it won't be exclusively, but typically they're being shuttled off to different places. Our athletes commission and Janet Evans, who leads that, when they bring the athletes here, they're just so excited. Now that's on the game side. The other pieces that we haven't dug into yet, as we think about the Anderson School and other components of UCLA, as we think about the impact that we can have on the organization, the impact we can have for your community, I think is all something that we want to really think, you know, closely with all of our partners. And we know you bring a lot of unique capabilities and unique thought to what it is we're doing.
Great. Well, you mentioned legacy earlier, and you know, one I think important aspect of the legacy is, as a no-build Olympics, there's a real attention to sustainability. But there's also an incredible opportunity for broader social impact. I mean, when I think about the potential influence that athletes have on societal problems like mental health and depression, for example, this is really an extraordinary opportunity to leverage the platform they have to really do social good. But I know this has been a real priority for you in the development of the plans for LA 2028. Tell us a little bit more, if you could, about sustainability and social impact as an important part of the legacy of LA 2028.
Yes, as I mentioned before, if we just put on a good games, we'll fall short of our opportunity, and we really believe that we, through the games, can be leaving hopefully unparalleled impact for the city of LA and the community, for the movement in the United States, and hopefully for future organizing committees as they seek to organize a different type of games. While I'm focused, mostly on the games themselves, we're trying to use that as a convening force with our partners to really dig into those opportunities. And our external affairs team is really thinking through impact in a number of different ways. Whether that's impact with youth and youth sports, which I can probably mostly talk about that in earnest today, environmental sustainability, economic empowerment, and culture, I think, are kind of our four main pillars. And we're starting to build those strategies that really started with youth sports. We made the commitment when we were awarded the 2028 games. Part of our discussions with the IOC is we want to be able to make sure we have a legacy for the games before 2028. And so in our negotiations and the partnership we struck for 28, we were able to commit up to $160 million of our operating budget to go towards increasing the accessibility and participation in youth sports leading up to the games. So the pandemic, put a little bit of a pause on that, but in 2021 we officially launched the program after a number of years of piloting it, and we are now, have programs through the city, a rec and parks group within underprivileged areas in the city to really help, provide scale. And it's not just improving accessibility for current programs, it's how do we help the city think differently about how to expand their programs, in particular adaptive sport, as we think about that as a key important runway for us as we go to the Paralympics. We've also developed a youth council that brings the youth of the city of LA to help advise us on those pillars. And then, I think the last point is we developed as part of our, it started from as an MOU with the city of LA, but as the signers of our host city contract, while we're still a private nonprofit, which is a unique structure in the Olympic world, the city of LA is our guarantor. And so we have a games agreement with the city of LA that really governs how we work together. But a key piece of how we evolved that agreement was putting together, or the concept of putting together working groups around those areas that I described. And so there's work going on right now to put together working groups around those pillars to really start to then set objectives for what the impact will be before the games and then beyond.
Great. Well, let me conclude by asking, you have this extraordinary enterprise that's going to be ramping up. What are the opportunities available to young people here in the audience and others to get involved? You mentioned 6,000 staff, 100,000 volunteers. Perhaps there are people in the audience who'd like to be involved in this wonderful event. How might they be able to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. As I said earlier, it takes a village, and while we're building the host committee at its core, we really need bright and smart minds to continue to help us think differently. So as I said, we're about 130 people today, but every year we're going to continue to grow. So the first piece is, we have our LinkedIn page is really where we post all of our full-time roles, but we are developing a internship program that I think we're already connecting with the school, as well as an athlete fellow program. And so I mentioned that earlier, but something that Janet Evans, our chief athlete officer, developed for all of those Olympians and Paralympians that have retired and want to start to evolve their career. I think that's one. Number two, while we haven't in earnest built our volunteer core yet, we're still wanting to make sure we've got people that are interested in volunteering and building that database. because as we start to engage more with the community, there might be more opportunities to bring people from outside the organization to help with that. That's still in development, but you can sign up on our website to at least start to get the information from what it is we're doing. And I think third, which is probably more institutional, is as we think about building our partnership with the school, what those opportunities might be. I was speaking with Eric earlier about where there's opportunities to engage your school in thought leadership. We've always had that in our sites, but we haven't been structured to be able to actually make that meaningful, but we're starting to get to a point in the next couple of years where we can start to think about those opportunities to not only provide opportunities for the students, but also have meaningful work that can create different ways of thinking about how we're going to make our way to 28.
Great. Well, on that note, thanks so much, John. I can't tell you how appreciative I am that you're here with us today. Also, how appreciative I think we all are that you're at the helm of this extraordinary journey and enterprise. Best wishes. We're looking forward to a tremendous LA 2028. And again, thanks for all you're doing.
My pleasure, and thank you for having me, and we're excited about the journey together. Thank you.